I think we're on here about 90 seconds, and we'll have some fun. See if we can't throw you off your game a little bit.
I'm Mark Austin Thomas in for Tammy Trujillo. California is getting more time to address prison overcrowding in the state. Katie Orr reports from Sacramento on the latest extension ordered today by 3 federal judges.
California now has until the end of February to comply with a court order to reduce overcrowding in its prisons. This is the 3rd extension a federal 3-judge panel has granted the state. In the meantime, it's ordered California to continue negotiating with plaintiffs in the case on a long-term solution to overcrowding. A federal judge has been appointed to mediate negotiations and report back to the panel. His next update is scheduled for mid-November. If California cannot come up with an acceptable long-term plan, the judges could allow the out-of-state transfer of about 4,000 inmates, or the judges could block any out-of-state transfers, forcing the state to release the prisoners instead. At the state capitol, I'm Katie Orr.
A second airport employee at LAX was charged today. 41-year-old Miguel Angel Inez was charged with 1 felony count of possession of a destructive device near an airplane. He's a supervisor for Stoltze, a British company that provides a variety of ground services at 175 airports around the world. He's charged in connection with the dry ice bombs recently discovered at the airport. Co-defendant, 28-year-old DeCarlo Bennett, was charged on Thursday with 2 felony counts of possession of a destructive device in a public place. 6 Southern California Edison employees were hospitalized and 20 others treated today for nausea and headaches. This outside a Long Beach call center. A strong order from an unknown source spread throughout the building at about 10 o'clock this morning. Everyone was let back in at 3. That source of the smell was never discovered. The time is 8:06. Now let's go live to the Crawford Family Forum, where KPCC's Frank Stoltze is talking with LA Mayor Eric Garcetti. Frank?
Thank you, Mark Austin Thomas. Welcome to the Crawford Family Forum. We're here with a big audience at the KPCC studios. Welcome to our radio audience. I'm Frank Stoltze, along with fairly newly elected Mayor Eric Garcetti. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Great to be here. Thank you,
as we mentioned at the top, he is LA's youngest mayor in over 100 years, 42 years old, the first elected Jewish mayor, and a man with an agenda, which we hope to look into a little bit tonight. I want to start out by saying I ran into your wife at City Hall.
Awesome. How's she doing?
She's doing well.
Good. Please give her my best.
I asked her to give me something to ask you that would throw you off your game.
Great.
Which seems hard to do. You know what she said? You want to take a guess?
What'd she say?
Yeah, no guesses?
She has a lot of material, so.
She refused. She said it was privileged information.
That's good.
So,
that's good.
Yeah.
Love you, baby.
Do you care to hint at all at what does throw you off? I mean, what?
Oh, I think I live life pretty, one day at a time. There are things that throw me off every single day, and that's part of the excitement of leading and also just of living. For me, there's somebody who tells you something, a piece of criticism that you can feel hurt by or you can learn from. Somebody who comes up with just such an amazing idea or this level of enthusiasm you're not used to, and that helps propel you on. I think a lot of things throw me, but that's okay. I used to be in theater, and they always said it wasn't the action, it's the reaction. So it's not if you get thrown, it's what do you do once you're thrown that really defines where you go.
Yeah, that's good training then for your job now. Any surprises, though, since you became mayor?
A lot of people have asked me that, including close friends. Tell us the dirty little secrets about City Hall. There's plenty of stuff to uncover, but not a lot of big surprises, because I've been there now for 12 years. I'm the longest-serving elected official at City Hall, which should scare you as much as it scares me to say. And I think that I've known that there's been things that need to change with the culture of City Hall. I've known there's some incredible people waiting to kind of have their potential unlocked. There's just this culture that says protect your rear end, and that's the way you get promoted, and never innovate. So, the level of that surprised me a little bit, but no huge surprises. We still have trouble, in terms of our fiscal health. We still have challenges in terms of our policy areas. We still have to continue to retrain and attract and train the very best people. But I'm actually pretty positively surprised by people's optimism at this moment in LA's history.
So you found that culture to be more pervasive than you realized when you became mayor. Why do you think that culture exists?
Well, I think it exists because we've had a culture where mayors ignore our department heads until they screw up. When they do something wrong, we micromanage them, say, get rid of that embarrassing thing, fix that scandal, and then they go away. There's not the kind of day-to-day, month-to-month management that, as the city charter says, the mayor is the CEO of the city. And we haven't really had that culture in place where we actually assess our general managers, question, in a new administration, whether one should stay or not, look at what sort of metrics and goals we can put out there that are truly quantifiable and measurable goals, not just, hey, I'm going to do better, and then you get to pick and choose which things you've done better and tell everybody you're a great mayor. And I think within for the city employees, and we have amazing city employees, I mean, people that I've known for 12 years who go on their off day and help clean up an alleyway in a neighborhood because they've gotten to know people with no pay, police officers who've saved lives of people who have been the victims of domestic violence, so many times they've lost count. But at the same time, it's not the quickest way to kind of be punished in our city culture right now is to try to be too innovative. And I think we have to change that culture. I want to empower our general managers to soar higher, but also make them more accountable. That's kind of the flip sides of the coin I'm trying to bring as the city CEO.
Confidence in government may be at an all-time low. We just finished a 2-week shutdown of the federal government. Fewer people than ever voted for you for mayor. I mean, the turnout was extraordinarily low. How are you going to get people's attention and maybe restore a little faith in government?
Well, it's true. I mean, we don't have very good examples at the national level. I mean, national government seems to be broken. I was just meeting with...
Well, but people regularly complain about City Hall, too.
But compared to the national government, we actually pass legislation, we fix things, we get along. Partisanship doesn't trump, the mission.
That's why they're flooding to the polls, flocking to the polls.
I think that's a nationwide trend, and it's driven as much top down as bottom up. I mean, we had twice the turnout, or more than twice the turnout of San Antonio's last election. We went through about 20 different cities right afterwards because a lot of people were saying this, and I said, let's look at why LA is so bad with voter turnout, and we're not. It's a trend across this nation in municipal elections. And Council President Herb Weston and I just convened a commission to look at what can we do to make elections easier. I think there's some electoral things you can do, like 10 years from now, we'll have kids who are registering to vote for the first time who will say, you actually had to walk someplace to vote. I think we will have secure online voting, just as we couldn't believe you could actually get a book online or things, just a few years ago as well. Mailing ballots to everybody the way the state of Oregon does. That boosted it in Oregon, but they're also going down. So to me, the answer isn't just changing the date, the rules, the way to vote. I think it's the time in between elections that are critical. We will see the symptom of the disease every election if we don't do the work in between. So what I'm committed to, and one of my kind of 9 goals for my administration, is boosting civic participation. That means understanding how City Hall works, volunteering, providing a platform to get engaged and involved. If you have something at stake that you've been working for in between those elections, you're more likely to show up, and I think that's the real disease.
But how do you pull that off? I mean, how do you get people more interested in city government?
Well, I mean, everybody driving right now, listening, who's stuck in traffic, cares about a city issue. Everybody who has a school in their neighborhood, and that should be everybody, whether you have kids in public school or have them of public school age, has a school that's very important to the life of that neighborhood and the property values. People fly in and out of LAX. People are looking for jobs in this economy. So everybody has a stake. But how do you translate that to action? I think 2 or 3 ways. One, I've tried to open up the doors of City Hall. I counted there's 8 doors between Spring Street or Main Street and the mayor's office. So 8 doors to get to your mayor.
So you set up a folding table outside. I got it.
We
I
did
followed that.
No, we did that in Boyle Heights, but
Yeah.
also office hours,
and that's
getting out
change
there.
everything.
Well, I think people having some trust that there is somebody they can talk to directly does matter. Whether that's in a tweet, hashtag LA Mayor, by the way, I'll put that plug in.
Hashtag KPCC.
Hashtag, at Stoltze, frankly, that's with an E.
Yeah, there you go.
For Frank Stoltze. Send him a lot of questions, please. You also have to give people the tools to understand how government works. So I have hired, for a decade, community organizers to come into city government. Long before we talked about kind of community organizers.
Your chief of staff was originally a community organizer.
Absolutely. Ana Guerrero, my chief of staff, was one. I've many people who do classes like Government 101, which teaches how City Hall work. I mean, I don't know how many people in this audience could explain how City Hall functions, but I'd be very impressed, if any of us could do it comprehensively. But if we can put a curriculum together, teach people how to do that. And then what I hope to do as mayor is to create a platform, maybe online, where people can plug in their address, their zip code, and see a lot of ways to get engaged, either by their geography or their subject area interest in something in LA. I think we suffer from a lower level of civic participation, not volunteerism, but civic participation. I mean, how often have people been asked who are listening, hey, can you do something for LA as LA?
Along this lines of faith in government and you know, the functioning of government, how well it works, we've had this big story break about earthquakes and the number of buildings in Los Angeles that are unreinforced cement buildings that would fall or likely fall in an earthquake. You know, this has been an issue that's been around for a long time. I think you co-sponsored a measure a few years ago to inventory these earthquakes. There have been promises over and over to address this problem, which threatens the lives of a lot of people in a major earthquake, which we are overdue for a major earthquake. So what's going to be different this time? What will you do differently this time that will, you know, get City Hall to address this issue?
You know, one of my first days I was in office, I toured our emergency management center, emergency operations center, which is this amazing thing out of a movie where you see huge screens and all these empty tables for the police, the fire, the animal services, transportation, vests that people are going to put on when that man-made or natural disaster hits, to just understand my role when that happens, you know, and make sure that I, you know, take care of my family, then get over there and can help direct our response. And so from that first week when I visited there, I talked to my staff about what we do, and earthquakes involve a whole host of issues. I mean, unreinforced concrete buildings are one of 4 building types that we need to look at. It's not unique to Los.
But these buildings clearly are the most dangerous in the city.
They may be. We had more damage in Northridge as well from some of the actually metal framed buildings that collapsed there, but there's no question that they're dangerous.
And there are most of those kinds of buildings. I mean, there are a few metal reinforced, but the cement, they're everywhere.
No, I don't mean metal reinforced, metal framed, which is a third type.
Okay.
It gets very, you know, not to get stuck in the weeds, I guess bottom line is this is important to me. I sat down recently with the head of the person who is kind of the earthquake czar out here, the head of the U.S. Geological Survey here, who's actually based just down the road at JPL. And we're talking about, remember, no city has retrofitted these in California. So this is a challenge we all face. We'll probably need some state help, and we need to assess this in a clear way. If it was easy to do, it would have been done. It's not just broken promises. It's the expense of these and the impact of once you make a list that may or may not be right, what it does to those building owners and how we can make sure we're not decreasing the value of their property. Now, life, to me, trumps property values. So the importance of this has made me bring together all the departments right now that deal with this, whether it's building and safety, whether it's the fire department, whether it's the folks at the emergency management department, to see what we can do to over time help us reinforce these buildings. But also, 10% of people are prepared for an earthquake right now. I mean, talk about the loss of life and property, much of the damage that happens afterwards. We have 90% of people who aren't even trained for when that comes. So we're not going to just look at one issue. I've tasked my people of looking comprehensively at our earthquake preparedness, which over the years has declined.
Well, I guess just not to beat this topic to death, but I mean, what will you do differently that we haven't done in the past? Because some of the stuff you're describing, other mayors have promised. We know that the apartment association, you know, opposes this. The business groups oppose this. They say it's going to cost too much to retrofit. So
well, I think we have to trump this and not talk about this as just an economic issue. It's a community issue and a public safety issue. So while there will be some opposition, as I'm not going to 112 days in here say that I have all the magic answers. It's a very difficult and expensive problem. I've suggested some things like state assistance and a rotating loan fund, for instance, which we're exploring. I said that as an idea, not as something where the state has offered that. We're looking at what San Francisco did with some of its soft buildings, that they were able to do a series of things over a 7-year timeline to be able to get them in compliance. They haven't, by the way, reinforced these buildings, to be clear. So I don't know what the promises of other mayors are. I just know that I'm going to approach this very soberly, but also with a sense of urgency. And we're going to be looking at earthquake preparedness for these buildings, but also for probably 19 or 20 other issues related to earthquakes simultaneously. We might figure out a way to reinforce these buildings, the earthquake comes, and the other 19 things we never did, and I wouldn't take that as a responsible approach.
Okay, so beyond promising to get everybody in the same room on this issue and to tackle a number of earthquake issues, what can you promise that will change?
I won't promise tonight. I'm the kind of person who wants to know the issue before I sit here and make promises, but we certainly are looking very deeply at the issues. We're looking at other building types as well, and trying to figure out those who have collected data, whether they'll share that with us. And our building and safety department is looking at ways that we can, for probably a lot less than the $50,000 to $100,000 that's been put out there, people could assess their buildings.
Okay, let's talk Department of Water and Power. By the way, you're listening to KPCC 89.3 FM. I'm Frank Stoltze, along with Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, live at the Crawford Family Forum. So glad you could join us tonight. You've said you want to reform the DWP. What kind of reforms do you want beyond the sick pay and the overtime stuff, which, you know, those abuses are relatively small compared to the size of that agency?
Well, the millions of dollars estimated in sick pay is not a small number to me, and I don't think it's a small number to our ratepayers. I think that we know what we know, and we know what we don't know, and we don't know what we don't know.
Donald Rumsfeld.
So there's three. Yeah, I'm not going to do the last one, but we have, you know, three categories of things. To me, I think there are all sorts of things that the general manager has already brought up in conversations with me. For instance, those folks who deal with accounts that are commercial and those who deal with accounts that are residential are separate, and they're not able to cover for each other. But it's the same skill set, and people have said no. Well, we've, I think, broken that down, and we're going to cross-train so people can cover each other. If you happen to deal with residential accounts, it's the same skill set as dealing with commercial and business accounts. But there's a whole host of things that have really happened behind closed doors and in the dark. So part of this is just opening up the process and letting people know what we do find out. I mean, for me, that's a central goal of my administration, is to try to put as much online, to try to be as transparent as possible, to share as much information, because so often the mistakes that have been made, even those of us who voted for them, sometimes didn't even know what the entire package was, or it never came to us in some cases for votes at all, these work rules. So a fair contract at DWP, which was something we got in the first 45 days of my administration, first time in 20 years, there won't be raises. There'll be 3 continuous years of 0%. A new tier for pensions to make it more sustainable. Those things are also as critically important as the work rules themselves. I also want to see where the money in the nonprofit Joint Training Institute and Joint Safety Institute is going.
That's that institute that's gotten $40 million over the last decade or so, unaccounted for.
And in fairness, you know, there's plenty of entities that come together and look at workplace safety and training, and there may be perfectly good answers, but if we don't have that information, how can we even assess that?
Well, what kind of leverage do you have? I mean, you're the mayor, Eric Garcetti, going up against probably the most powerful union leader in Los Angeles, Brian Darcy. You know, he's sort of this rough around the edges head of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, you know, representing 9,000 or so DWP workers, won these amazing contracts over there. I mean, he's a powerful guy, and he likes to, you know, throw his weight around occasionally. I mean, what leverage do you have going forward with him? Because he's pointing
I have the people
at
of
the
Los
audience.
Angeles. I mean, I was elected, and the DWP was not an insignificant issue in the election. I think that the people, and you know, to his credit, for instance, when we had the momentum from the election that we did, when we saw the numbers that there were in terms of the contracts and wages and pensions, we couldn't have done that agreement if he, at the end of the day, hadn't stepped up. So I'm not going to create another fight, but I will be strong to my values. I will continue to reform the Department of Water and Power. I welcome the union, the workers, the management to be a part of that. But if they're not, I'm going to continue barreling forward.
Do you feel like you have the upper hand on him now?
I feel that I have the people behind me, and that's the most important and strongest thing you can have.
That's a good answer. Water and power rates. Water and power rates, if you're living in the city of Los Angeles, water and power rates are going to go up no matter what, and fairly substantially over the next few years. I'm not sure everybody understands that. How much do you expect water and power rates to go up over the next few years, and why are they going up?
I don't have an estimate, but that's not unique to the city of Los Angeles. It's everybody in the state of California. 2 things drive this. One is there's some additional upfront costs to renewable energy, and there's a mandate at the state to do that. I think it's a good thing, and I think in the long term, not only is it good for the environment, it's much cheaper. There's a long-term cost of living cheap in the short term, burning coal to get our electricity, doing things that are very destructive and ultimately very costly in the cleanup to our earth and to our city. Second, there is regulation for what's called once-through cooling, those power plants that are right on the coast that were damaging marine life, state legislation coming down. That drives more than even all of our wages and pensions combined. So we will see power rates go up. To me, I'm focused, though, in the department. I want them to invest much more in helping us conserve power in our homes, because at the end of the day, the rates may go up, but if we have a cheaper bill, because we're consuming much less, and all of us listening today can save some power in our homes, in some cases quite dramatically. We can actually see a situation in which rates may go up, but the average Angelino can help bring their bills down.
Why has the DWP been reluctant to do that in the past?
They have shortchanged it. I think many utilities, not just DWP, have seen that as a peripheral issue. They've underfunded it. There's a reward for them in doing it. The state's been very progressive, and they get to share in some of the savings, so they're not just getting less of their product being sold. They actually get a reward for the more conservation that occurs. So DWP has a stake in it, and all of us have a stake that are DWP ratepayers. So already with Ron Nichols, our general manager, we're looking at a significant increase of investment, more than doubling of what we had in energy and water conservation programs.
Yeah, I just want to point out very quickly. I mean, the Department of Water and Power and its labor union have essentially been impervious or have not really been subject to much control from the mayor's office or the city council in the past.
Is that a statement or a question?
Is that an accurate description?
It may or may not, but I think that right now it's a changed playing field. I mean, we can
Largely
get lost
because
in the
of
history.
the election.
A lot of people have, yeah, the election, it was a defining issue of the election, but I think also because people, have looked closely and want more. The ratepayer advocate, which was something that I put on the ballot, was passed overwhelmingly. And it was that at that moment, I think a lot of us realized we weren't sure what we didn't know. We needed a second opinion. We needed somebody standing up for the ratepayers. That overwhelmingly went through, and to me, that was the first sign that there was something that we needed to go deeper in the DWP with.
Let's talk just a little bit about your public persona. You've held
This is from my
sidewalk.
wife, huh?
You've held sidewalk office hours, as we mentioned earlier, with a folding table just setting up on the street. One was in Boyle Heights, I think. We may even have a picture of that up on the screen here at the Crawford Family Forum. Why do you do that? I mean, you kind of suggested this earlier, but I mean, how does it really inform you about your job? I mean, isn't it a little bit more show than anything else?
I do it because I love it. I've done it for 12 years.
Well, you love setting up tables on sidewalks?
I love
and
talking,
having people come up and
even before I was elected, I just do it and sell lemonade, and people would look at me strangely when I wasn't the mayor, but it was great. No,
you enjoy the...
I love this part of the job. I mean, if you insulate yourself at City Hall all day long, you're never going to be in contact with the 99.9% of Angelinos you never will see at a community meeting, that will never be at City Council, that will never write you a letter, anything like that.
Why do you like it?
Because it's real. I mean, I've done it for 12 years, so I think my training as a professor was something I loved. Office hours. It was a time you didn't know who was going to show up. There was somebody with an academic problem, a personal problem, who just wanted to talk ideas. You get a really interesting cross-section of life, so it's a good time, but I've also seen the effect of it. The stability of doing that every month for 12 years as a council member. People could see me, could hear me. I wasn't some abstraction. I wasn't two-dimensional. I can't meet with everybody as mayor now. Everybody who signs up, we do it at random. I get a portion of them, and my staff members, who arguably are more important than me anyways in resolving these problems, meet with the others. But we just opened up our South LA office on 84th and Vermont, and we held these office hours. And it was, I mean, I met a woman who was about to lose her home. I met a guy who was an expert on reentry, which is folks coming out of prison and looking for jobs, and I want to establish an office of reentry in the mayor's office to deal with realignment and all these returning former prisoners to make sure they don't reoffend. You get people who just want to share a great triumph, and people who are sharing with you their deepest tragedies and need help. I don't just do it at office hours, though, as well. We have a help desk, as I mentioned, that's at City Hall and in 3 other places in the city. And I do neighborhood walks. Our first one was in Venice. I was hoping we'd get a couple dozen people. Over 200 people showed up to go door to door. And I meant it during the campaign when I said, don't be scared if the mayor shows up at your door unexpected. We had, a guy in tattoos who's the next biggest rock star, next to a Lithuanian grandmother who's an immigrant, next to the African-American woman who tends the pantry at the Baptist church across the street, all in 3 apartments. And, if I don't stay in touch with the people that I represent, I can't do my job.
At the same time, you keep some meetings quiet. You had major meetings out of the public eye. For instance, you met with the Motion Picture Association chief, Chris Dodd. Never said anything about it. Why not share that kind of meeting with the public and talk about it?
I'm happy to. I mean,
But it wasn't on your schedule, or...
Oh, and when, there's private meetings that people ask for. I mean, sometimes if somebody gives me a call and they ask for a private meeting, they may have something private to speak about that's good for the city of Los Angeles.
Did he ask for a private meeting?
Yeah, I mean, he asked to meet with me in City Hall, but I'm happy to talk about what we talked about. Chris Dodd and Motion Picture Association of America, obviously they're for filming everywhere, but I wanted to talk a lot about filming in California. We talked a lot about his experience with as one of the people who wrote the Affordable Care Act and the implementation of it right now. So, no, I'm always pretty straightforward. Unless somebody asks me to keep something private, probably to my staff's frustration, I'm very public about what I do, who I meet with. I get a breakdown of my calendar each week, so I can see what subject areas I'm meeting in, how many constituents versus special meetings I have, and I want to keep that balance. I mean, the economy is my number one priority, for instance. Last week, 42.3% of my time, I had meetings that had to do about economic growth, the economy.
Wait a minute. Did you just say 43-point-something% of your time?
I did not. I said 42.3. But that was
Those darn journalists get it wrong every single time.
Typical.
We're going to take a quick break, but first, I want to know who your favorite Republican is. Favorite Republican, quickly.
Favorite Republican, probably Teddy Roosevelt.
See, we also need to be very precise in our questions. Do you have a favorite living Republican?
Let me think about it.
This is 89.3 KPCC. I'm Frank Stoltze. We're here with the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti. In a moment, we'll be talking about pensions and his plans to change the pension system in Los Angeles. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back.
KPCC supporters include the Los Angeles Master Chorale, presenting Carmina Burana at Walt Disney Concert Hall. This epic choral work presents a sprawling panorama of lovers, drunkards, gamblers, and maidens, all behaving at their worst. 2 performances November 2nd and 3rd. Tickets and information available at lamc.org.
Good evening, it's 8:31. I'm Mark Austin Thomas. The doors of the Middle Eastern Student Center at the University of California, Riverside officially open tonight. Backers say it's the first of its kind in the UC system, and they want the center to serve as a resource for people of all religious and ethnic backgrounds, open to anyone who wants to learn more about Middle Eastern cultures. Center member Shadi Matar hopes the new facility will help overcome stereotypes about the region.
In a post-9/11 world, there's a lot of ambiguity and a lot of mystery surrounding the Middle East. In one aspect, they think, it's just a bunch of terrorists and there's no culture, there's no dynamic, there's no humanity. And to another aspect, a lot of people are just confused and they think it's just like the movie Aladdin, where there's flying carpets and all this kind of stuff.
Members also hope the center will facilitate discussion about conflicts in the Middle East. Quick look at traffic in Culver City, the 405 North past Skirball. A stalled car has been cleared from the lanes. Traffic is slow from Santa Monica Boulevard. This is 89.3 KPCC. It's 8:32. KPC's Frank Stoltze live at the Crawford Family Forum, and he's talking with LA Mayor Eric Garcetti. Frank?
Thank you, Mark Austin Thomas. We are at the Crawford Family Forum here at KPCC.
So I got a favorite Republican. That's alive.
In case you're just joining us, the Democratic mayor of Los Angeles was asked who his favorite Republican elected, it doesn't have to be elected, but living at least.
Well, I assumed it was a living elected official.
Oh, you said Teddy Roosevelt, which, that's such an easy one.
He's no longer living. But Jeff Gurrell, who is a great assembly member and a dear friend. We served together in the Navy, and he got elected to the assembly and then got deployed to Afghanistan and just came back recently. I would say is my favorite Republican right now.
Why do you like him?
Cool guy. I mean, he's just fun to hang out with. He's crossed over party lines. He's somebody who, for instance, came to the signing of the driver's license bill here at City Hall with Governor Brown.
We're going to get to pensions in just a second, but we're running something called Project Citizen here, which is a little bit of our outgrowth of our Dear Mayor series. Did you listen to our Dear Mayor series during the campaign?
I did.
We were out at cafes, talking to voters live on the air in the morning.
Did you set up a table in Boyle Heights? Yeah.
See, that's the problem with you. You never miss a beat.
That's right. Musician.
And people are suspicious of that, I think. Have you picked up on that?
I don't know. I mean, I am who I am.
But I mean, have you picked up on the fact that because you're pretty well spoken, you're pretty smart?
No, all kidding aside, I think that I do try to inject humor into politics. It's important to me and to have in life, to take issues seriously, but not to be unafraid to laugh at yourself or the journalist interviewing you.
Well, but I have entertained Mayor Bradley, Mayor Reardon, Mayor Hahn, who's not easy to entertain, and Mayor Villaraigosa, who was a cakewalk. So I'm glad I'm succeeding with you. I wasn't talking about the humor. I was talking about your being so well-spoken and, as I say, intelligent. People sort of take that sometimes, I think, as sometimes wondering what's his motive, what really drives him.
Well, I can only say what I'm driven by. I'm very honored to have grown up in the city of Los Angeles. I had a father who I think a lot of people figured I grew up in politics. He didn't run, actually. He was an anonymous kind of public servant until the year I graduated from college. So, I didn't grow up in a quote-unquote political family, but certainly the day I told him I wanted to run for city council, his advice was, didn't you learn anything from me? I mean, he wasn't exactly encouraging me. And so I think I'm driven by something, knowing this is a tough life. I mean, the pace of it, the hours of it. But at the end of the day, one of those people who shares a tragedy with me on a city corner and 3 days later were able to write their life a little bit, that's what drives me, full stop. It's the only thing that kind of continues to keep me in what is otherwise a pretty tough profession.
Why does that drive you?
I don't know. I think the values that my family gave me, the city that I grew up in. I had a mother who headed up a charitable foundation. My father was a prosecutor, but always said he loved being a prosecutor because you could decide not only who to prosecute, but those times when you shouldn't. So it worked kind of both ways in justice. He wasn't just out to put people in jail. And I had grandparents who, a grandfather, my mom's father, who was President Johnson's tailor, worked himself up to quite a level of success in the clothing business, and then spoke out against the Vietnam War and took out full-page ads against it, losing his best client. I think I just was raised with the idea you speak up and you speak out for the things you believe in, and if you can help somebody, it's going to make you a better person, and they're certainly going to see their lives improve too.
Before I came in here to talk to you, somebody said, gee, he seems like a guy who's sort of been groomed for this from the beginning, that he had his eye on this office or higher office all of his life, and has sort of been ambitious this way since day one.
No, I mean, this may be the last office I ever hold, and people are always like, what's next? I was sworn on the inauguration day, people are like, governor's next. I'm like, I haven't done one thing yet. Like, give me a chance to do things. And I think that I will always assess that. I see too many people in this profession who are 2-3 jobs ahead of themselves. And, I want to continue making a difference. I look forward to the day, just as I watched my father, maybe voluntary or involuntarily, returning to a more private life and enjoying some of, the family and individual pursuits. I certainly wasn't groomed for this. If anything, I think my parents encouraged me to go into music or to stay with theater or to do something else. But I'm here today, and I'm glad I'm here.
I guess this is the moment to ask you about your, favorite poem or favorite line from a song?
One of my favorite poems is by Marge Piercy. It's called Stone, Knife, Paper. And it just talks about, it's the end of a book by the same name, and I'll paraphrase a line from it. I mean, there's something about hope sleeping like a hibernating bear waiting for the winter frost to melt. And it's just a beautiful image about that, at those coldest times in our lives, whether it's as a city, whether it's as a country, individually, that, there is this powerful force that continues to propel you forward, and that's hope. We will move forward, propelled by our own energy here at KPCC. From our Project Citizen, this is what I wanted to ask you just a second ago. We have something called Project Citizen where we're asking everybody, was there a particular moment in your life when you realized you wanted to be a public servant? So you said earlier that you weren't the kid in high school who ran for student body president and had your eye on the mayor's office. Certainly not in the mayor's office. I didn't even know city government or who my city a council member was, I think, growing up.
So can you pinpoint that moment?
I think the moment in the widest sense that I know I wanted to be a public servant, I don't know, elected official, but public servant, was probably the summer that I spent doing human rights work in Burma, 2 summers actually, and had met a lot of students who were my same age, who had risen up for democracy, won an election, only to be thrown out by a government that literally shot their classmates alongside them, as well as kids, monks, unarmed women, and they fled to the jungle, where I spent one of the formative summers of my life, 2 of the most formative summers of my life, and I realized that I had to be kind of engaged in the world of the world, involved in things. It propelled me probably to join the Navy later on, and just to have some sort of sense of not being powerless in this world and trying to help a lot of people not be powerless too.
Did that toughen you up, that experience? I imagine that's...
I don't know. You have to ask my parents. We'll see. I think so.
Let's talk pensions for a second. The Democratic mayors of several cities, the Santa Ana, San Bernardino, San Jose, have proposed a ballot initiative to give a city the ability to reduce pensions of current employees. No doubt you've heard about this. That's something that's prohibited now, changing the pensions of current employees. A lot of experts say that's the only way to address the chronic ongoing problem of funding pensions for public employees. Would you support that measure, likely to be on next year's ballot?
Well, some experts think that it's illegal under federal law. Either way, I think the best pathway forward is to actually negotiate these things directly, like we've done in Los Angeles. You can...
No, not going to happen.
Well, we did.
Well, but not for current employees.
Yes, we did.
Did you change? You changed the formula for current employees?
We changed what they
the
have
contribution
to pay,
rate.
the contribution,
Yeah.
which, look, numbers are numbers. You can change 3 or 4 different things. At the end of the day, they save the same amount of dollars, and you have to negotiate them at a table. That's an immensely difficult thing to do. But I was proud of our unions. I was proud to be a part, as city council president, of those negotiations, a central part of them, because otherwise we would have had to lay people off. People who stayed behind allowed people to retire early and picked up the tab, which is like, you know, you and me saying, okay, you've been there longer. Why don't you let me retire early and you'll pay for it so that she doesn't get laid off? I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing.
Do there need to be further adjustments to the
Yeah,
pensions
we're not out of the
current employees? And can you do it strictly using contributions and not changing formulas, which would require passage of this initiative?
Well, I think people focus too much on one route or another. At the end of the day, you have a paycheck with a certain amount of salary, and a certain percentage comes out for benefits. That includes pensions, health care, and a couple other things. If you can get agreements on healthcare costs, it's as good as pensions. If you can get pensions, it's as good as a salary, increase not happening. If you can get a salary increase not to happen, it's as good as the pensions or healthcare. So I'm pretty flexible how we get there, but I'm not flexible about saying that we're home free yet. We absolutely are not. And we might be able to balance the budget. I certainly could probably skate through these 8 years and give it to the next guy or gal who's coming, but I kind of wondered who came before me who gave us this hot mess, and I wanted to do something a little differently. And so for me, it's really important that we not just get through these years, but restore the city services we've cut. And if we give raises or continues pensions the exact same way they are, or if we don't adjust our healthcare costs, that's what will happen. We will be able to freeze what we have, which is a level of service that to me is unacceptable.
People may not realize, if they haven't been listening, but Los Angeles has undergone a historic shrinking of city government. I mean, the size of government is what it was back in the Bradley era in the 1980s.
With 1 million more people now.
And with more people. Yeah. So is it possible to address, say, crumbling streets without passing a $3 billion bond, as has been proposed by a couple of council members?
Whether it's a bond or something else, no. I'm not going to lie to people and say, oh, more efficient government will pave all of our streets after 70 years of neglect. What I will say is, what would you rather do? Pay the average $700 a year that a driver does to take your car in and give it to a repair shop, or $150 to $200 a year to comprehensively rebuild and repave our streets? I think that's a fair choice to give the voters, and I'm going to sit down and look at what ways we could do that. That's what it's estimated to cost. I was with somebody yesterday who said he took his Prius in and it's $3,000 of damage from city streets. And the guy at the shop said, we get this all the time. We love the city streets being like this.
Well, so what besides the $3 billion bond would do it? How else are you going to raise $3 billion?
Oh, you can do bonds. There's parcel taxes. There's sales tax. You can try to get more money from Sacramento or from the federal government and bond against that. There's probably 5 or 6 different ways, and I'm open to them all, but I'm not open to pretending to solve this problem by boosting by 10% more the number of potholes we pave, and potholes being paved isn't fixing a street. So I would like, at the end of my time as mayor, to look back and say we made a huge dent if we didn't completely comprehensively repave the streets of LA. One last thing, I mean, people just, if you want to get a sense of how big the problem is, 70 years of neglect. If we had a 4-lane highway, it would stretch from here to Paris. Nobody comes close to the number of streets we have, and it's a serious problem we need to face.
You mentioned potholes. KPCC and KNBC partnered in an investigation that found the city only pays 10% of the claims from drivers who say potholes damage their cars. How long should the city have to fix a pothole before it is liable for the damage to my car?
I don't know the exact amount of time, but what we do need to have is a database. I don't have that answer today, but we need something fairer, and we need to see the 25% that were never adjudicated in a timely fashion, so they disappeared.
Yeah.
That's unacceptable. And as our city attorney has said, who's looking into this, Mike Feuer, part of the reason I want to bring technology and kind of 21st century management to the city is we can't even track which potholes we have and how quickly they're done in a public way. If we put those out there for the public, then that allows you to fairly say, it's not a he said, she said, oh, I swear it was there. The city says, no, it wasn't there, or we did it in a timely fashion and the driver says no. I want this to be as clear as possible. That's the reason we're asking department heads to develop apps that show the health of the street, that can map the calls you have for your couch that needs to be picked up, the pothole that needs to be repaired. If we can get to that place with our 311 system, and we're working very aggressively, and I've given the charge to a number of our departments to do that, I think some of these issues won't bubble up because we'll have clear and transparent information.
Okay, so we're not going to get a time frame on the pothole. Okay,
not tonight.
You've said you support.
But we do generally pave if they're brought in a pothole. We generally do repair them in 48 hours.
You're repairing potholes within 48 hours now?
Not paving streets, which is different, but repairing a genuine pothole, that hole that's in the street. We generally get a crew in 48 working hours out there to repair it. And trust me, I call them in. I don't say I'm the mayor, and I test the system, and that's generally what I get. That doesn't mean there's a few that don't take longer. That said, the repairing of a crumbled street, you do pothole repairs for that. That's a failed street that's full of larger gashes. And
so you're secretly calling in as mayor?
I do. That's the only way you can do quality control.
That brings up another question.
Which one? What other secret calls have you made, Mr. Garcetti?
Yeah, who is Eric from Silver Lake, and what does he think the Dodgers must do to improve their lot?
Well, Eric from Silver Lake, suspiciously. This was a tough season. I'm proud of how far they came from the middle of the season, but the owner said to me the other night, do you know what it's like to have $100 million worth of people who are injured? And I said, quite honestly, I don't. But the Dodgers, I'm a huge Dodger fan. I think that
and you're calling in.
I think we've just got to get well. Yeah, I've called in to the radio shows sometimes. I think we just have to get healthy.
Secretly?
No. I said I was Eric from Silver Lake, and they didn't believe it was me when I called into the sports talk
You're making
radio
a lot
the
of
other day.
secret calls.
No. Got to keep people guessing.
You do. You've said you support rideshare companies that provide alternatives to taxis. We've heard about these companies, the rideshares. City Council is considering those, suing them to stop them, arguing they're unsafe. Would you veto any effort by the City Council to move to sue the companies?
Probably. I think that they're going to consider that this week. I don't think that's necessarily the right way forward. I think whenever we have disruption, an Amazon or a Skype comes along, you can pretend to fight it, but that's not the best way forward. The better way is to figure out how do we begin to incorporate new and disruptive technologies into the city as it is. How do we get taxi companies to have the same apps that they have for an Uber or a Lyft, or some of the rules may be taken off of the taxi companies to allow them to compete. I don't want it to be an unequal playing field. And whether it's Airbnb, which is a way you can get a hotel room in someone's house, or Uber and Lyft, I do think they have a responsibility to their city. People drive cars through the city and create those potholes. Airbnb, somebody can stay there. I don't have a problem with somebody renting out their room in tough times. or to make a little extra, but maybe they should be paying a hotel tax like regular hotel rooms. So for me, it's how do we take this new sharing economy that people are calling it and try to convene them to be a leader in kind of being a forward-looking city that welcomes there, saying this is a center of innovation, we want to see these companies land here, create jobs here, but you also have a civic responsibility. Just because you're on the internet doesn't mean no rules apply to you.
Okay, so city's not going to sue under your watch, is what I hear you saying.
I would prefer them not to, and I would veto that, yeah.
Rebranding LA. We've heard that you got advice from Creative Artists Agency about rebranding Los Angeles. Did you seek that out, and what form did the advice take from them?
Absolutely. Among others, I've gone to people who are really smart in this area. I think LA has the best ingredients to sell to companies, to tourists, to investors, to people who want to trade. But we've been really lazy about our brand management. You land at LAX, you have no sense you're in LA. Besides the crumbling terminals and lack of public transportation. You go out into the streets and, I think because we've had good weather, we just assume people will come, people will invest. It's really important for us to go out there in a competitive world and make sure that a Korean investor doesn't go to Las Vegas, a Chinese company wants to trade with the Port of LA instead of going through the Panama Canal. Part of that is telling LA's story. So I'm going to those people who are experts in this area and saying, what ideas do you have for us to be able to present LA in a more competitive way? It's a central part of my job.
What's the one piece of advice they gave you, the best piece?
Oh, I think that this is the creative center of the world. That this is where creativity lives. That whether it's a tourist coming here,
did they have a logo though, or did they have
no, they didn't do that. It's interesting. They actually said LA is such a strong brand underneath it all. You don't need a logo. You don't need a slogan. That's what a smaller city in the Midwest or something would need. People have a sense of what LA is, but we've got to do a better job promoting that.
So it's really promoting it, not necessarily rebranding it.
Right, okay. Exactly.
All right. We're talking to Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti. We're at the Crawford Family Forum. This is 89.3 KPCC. I'm Frank Stoltze. We are live, and we're so glad that you joined us here in the Crawford Family Forum and that you are joining us on the radio right now. There's a lot of money coming in to restore the LA River. How do you make sure LA gets value from the effort to revitalize the river, and that the right projects come up?
Well, we're not getting a lot of money yet, but I will be in Washington, D.C. at the end of this month. The Army Corps of Engineers put out their study plan with 4 options for ways we can revitalize stretches of the river. And I hope that we can all support something called Alternative 20, which is a $1 billion plan that really builds on almost a decade and a half of city work. I mean, hundreds of community meetings, literally, that I attended in neighborhoods from the Valley all the way to Chinatown, along the river, where people said, why have we turned our back to this great asset? In my former district, in areas right next to Griffith Park, we have what's called the Glendale Narrows, where there's no paved bottom. And you see fish jumping there. I kayaked there this summer. In fact, one of the pictures that will greet travelers at LAX, I didn't want to just do a kind of a silly headshot. Kathy Opie, who's a great photographer, is taking a few pictures of me around the city, and the first one was in a kayak on the LA River. We think this is a great asset for restoring the environment, for rebuilding the economy, for creating livable communities. And how are we going to get value from that money? I think we got to get the money first. But second, I'm very confident of the plan we've put together. It has the potential to do what the rebirth of rivers around this country, whether it was way back during the Depression when San Antonio created an amazing river walk, whether it's in Korea and Seoul where they ripped out a freeway to put their river back. It really could be the backbone of this city. After all, the city was founded along the river, and it's where we got our name.
So you want to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on the river to revitalize it. How do you square that with the absence of just plain safe, good parkland in low-income and minority neighborhoods in the city?
Well, it is. When I represented that area, if you looked at the per capita income in neighborhoods like Elysian Valley, across the river in Cypress Park, you go to the headworks where it starts up in the northwest San Fernando Valley. There are high, medium, and low-income neighborhoods along the way. And I think, I would like to increase park space throughout the city. The original plan...
But that's a lot of money on the river, which is a relatively small part of the city.
It's 51 miles that links us together. It touches this entire place. It is literally our backbone.
Does it touch, let's see... Pacoima, Sunland?
No,
I mean, there are a lot of
but
places
the
it doesn't
tributaries
touch.
do, and the conversation is really about those tributaries as well and how we bring them in. Our waterways are critical to this city. We have the potential that they run now year-round because they used to run dry, but every time you flush the toilet, it gets treated, and that helps us actually sustain very clean water in the river. I think this is a critical part of our city's future. It is definitely the part of our past, and it probably hits more neighborhoods than any other waterway. We restore the coast all the time, and that hits a small fraction of the neighborhoods that the river does.
You are said to be close to President Obama. How close are you? What do you think you have in common with him?
We have some interesting currents, and we've gotten to know each other over years, but even before he was president. He went to Occidental and Columbia. I taught at Occidental, went to Columbia. We have kind of parents of mixed heritage, both of us. I think we, share a lot in common, but we're also, quite different people. But he is somebody who I certainly have enjoyed as a mentor and a friend, not just somebody who I supported as president.
What did he teach you?
I think he taught me.
I mean, was there something personally that?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about everything from immigration reform when he was a senator, and I've been an advisor to him on that for many years.
No, what did he? What was? Can you recall? I don't know, a conversation, or did he tell you to wear your suits differently, to tie your tie different? I don't know.
He's always given me very good advice, just in life. Opportunities I've had, for instance, in Washington D.C., he was very honest about how difficult a place that is. At a time, I was making a decision about running for mayor. And I valued that a lot. It probably helped me make that decision to jump in this race.
So what did he say to you?
Well, I'll keep my counsel with the president.
If you had one thing to get out of President Obama for Los Angeles, what would it be?
Support. I'm going to make it two. I know it was one, but it's going to be support for building out our public transportation infrastructure here, building out the lines that'll take us from Claremont to the ocean and take us into LAX and up Crenshaw Boulevard and the LA River. Those are the two things. I haven't called in a lot of chits, but those are the two things for LA I'd like to see his
How
help.
much do you think you can get?
Well, we have $1 billion plan, and half of it should come from the federal government. So $500 million for the river, and then we've got a few $1 billion worth of public transit projects ready to go here. Great for jobs for America, and I think a great example of rebuilding an incredible American city.
You're active on Twitter.
Sometimes.
Whose tweets are important to you? Whose tweets are important to you?
Besides yours, Frank.
Besides at Stoltze, frankly. Hashtag
which is,
KPCC.
Stoltze with an
hashtag,
E
right.
at Stoltze, frankly. I don't know. A lot of people, I don't get a chance to read a lot of Twitter feed. I go quickly to those who have put me in their tweet because with my limited time, I want to try to respond to as many of those as I can. But, I've talked on KPCC about some of the folks that I follow. I like LA City Nerd, who I forgot to give a shout out to last time, which may be Frank Stoltze for all we know. We don't know the identity, and I hope that you will out yourself tonight on Twitter. Mr. City Nerd. Mr. Stoltze.
So you don't want to do anything more serious. I wanted to ask you about the digital divide because you are using social media a lot, but access to technology remains certainly uneven among economic classes. And so how do you serve everybody fairly?
I'll give you a great example. I talked to an individual who started a cosmetics company in Los Angeles. He worked for other people's companies for years. He set up the cosmetics company. He's from the Valley. He found industrial land in South LA, first on kind of Adams, moved it further south. It's growing by leaps and bounds. He's hiring from the neighborhood, literally. Families who live a block or two away are the ones who are working for him. He's had double-digit growth. It's worth tens of millions of dollars now, and he can't get high-speed internet access. So I was just making calls, as I do every week, to businesses, leads that I hear about. My business team told me about this, and I called him and I said, so what's going to happen? He said, I think I'm going to have to move out of LA, or at the very least out of South LA. I said, give me a sec, and I'll call AT&T and Time Warner, and whoever gets there first, I'm happy to give them credit for building out. But you see, even somebody who's willing to come to an empty space in South LA, provide jobs in there, that we do have a city that's still too segregated in terms of its access to the internet and to broadband, and we need to change that.
We've been speaking with Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti. Who do you like for president in 2016? Quickly.
I like to live in the present. People spend way too much time in the future.
Oh, hold on. What's your Halloween costume?
My daughter and my wife are going to be dressed as Spider something, so there will be a spider involved. I don't have an outfit yet, but if you have a suggestion or want to come over and help me put it together.
I'm sure we'll come up with something. Thank you so much to our audience at the Crawford Family Forum. Thank you for listening on the radio to this live broadcast with Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
9 o'clock on KPCC, tracing the African-American experience from the second inauguration of President Obama to the first African explorer in 1513. And at 10 o'clock on the